And the first thing to remember about MGTOW is that a man that has taken the metaphorical red pill is a man that has learned the ugly truth about female nature. So taking the red pill is making yourself a beautiful how women operate, but the truth is stop women today who rip out your heart and testicles through your wallet.
Hello YouTube, this is Genuine Peach here, and today we are going to be talking about a community who I believe is not particularly fond of women, to say the very least. And I just want to apologize to my current subscribers because you all seem like extremely reasonable people, as evidenced by my last video on Anita Sarkeesian. So the reason I am apologizing to you guys is because I believe you are going to have some very interesting interactions in the comment section down below with some very unreasonable people, and I hope the MGTOW community proves me wrong on this one. And for all of you newcomers, make sure to stay tuned to the end of this video for my commenter and subscriber highlights. And if you would like to be mentioned in my next video, make sure to comment and or subscribe down below. I would really appreciate it. Now, you've probably guessed by now that we are going to be discussing the MGTOW community on YouTube. And for you guys that don't know who MGTOW is, stay tuned because I am about to explain everything to you. But first of all, I want to make 5 things very clear about my intentions because I have absolutely nothing to gain from this video, and I will show you why. So, number 1. A large portion of my subscribers are from my Anita Sarkeesian video. Therefore, a lot of my subscribers are males who very much dislike feminazis, just as I do, and may tend to agree with MGTOW philosophies. But let that last video be evidence that I am against the third wave feminism movement, and that I do not identify as a feminist in a first world country, okay? So I don't want any comments down below saying my opinion is invalid because I'm a feminist and I'm taking this shit personally. That is entirely untrue. Number 2, I won't make any money from this video. Let's just get that out of the way. I have made a total of $15 off of YouTube, all of which I have donated to the Feed the Badger charity. Number 3, I know I'm going to receive a lot of hate because the MGTOW community is very well known for not being able to handle mild criticisms and legitimate concerns, which is eerily similar to a certain person I made a video of. Guess who it is? Guess. Number 4, I'm not playing the NAWALT card, also known as the Not All Women Are Like That card, which is meant to make a woman more appealing to men who think that all women are like that, also known as AWALT. First of all, I don't take AWOL statements personally. I'm 21, I'm in a happy long-term relationship. I'm not looking to appeal to any men. And if you want proof of that, you can go ahead into my basement where he's tied up and ask him. Just make sure to remove the ball gag before you try to communicate with him, obviously. That was, of course, a joke in poor taste for those of you who did not get it. I don't have a basement, I keep him in the closet. And number 5, I want to make it clear that nothing in this video is meant to be a personal attack against you. I want this video to be based on facts and observation, not personal feelings, okay? If anything can come out of this video, I hope that it promotes civil discussion, especially from the MGTOW community. Nobody will be silenced here, even comments like this. But if you do want to resort to comments like this, just keep in mind you are going to look like a fool because the majority of the people on my channel are reasonable adults that like to engage in civil discussion, okay, from what I've seen. Now, the reason I am even making this video at all is because I think the MGTOW community is not helping men at all. And the reason I think this is because this community frequently promotes self-improvement and independence, especially to young and impressionable teenage boys, and it is doing the exact opposite of that in my opinion, and I will explain why later on in this video, so just hang on to your seat. So what is MGTOW? So for those of you that don't spend as much time on YouTube as I do, you probably don't even know what MGTOW even is. So before we go into an analysis of this community, I just want to explain to you what MGTOW is and the different levels of MGTOW. So MGTOW stands for men going their own way, and the definition of MGTOW from MGTOW.com is men going their own way is a statement of self-ownership where the modern man preserves and protects his own sovereignty above all else. It is the manifestation of one word, no, ejecting silly preconceptions and cultural definitions of what a man is, looking to no one else for social cues, refusing to bow, serve, and kneel for the opportunity to be treated like a disposable utility, and living according to his own best interests in a world which would rather he didn't. This definition sounds very empowering, first of all. The things that stood out to me is that they are living to their own best interests, assuming that they are focusing on their own self-improvement, and that they are saying no, and that they promote independence and self-ownership. All things that can be inarguably respected in my opinion. This definition is very relatable to the original definition of MGTOW, which is by one of the founders of MGTOW, Rob Fetters, from the blog No Ma'am in 2001. And reading his definition, I gotta say he'd probably be ashamed of what MGTOW has turned into on YouTube. So he states that the original goals of MGTOW are to instill masculinity in men, femininity in women, and work toward limited government. By doing all of that, we make men self-reliant, proud, and independent. We make women nurturing, supporting, and responsible, and we are working for freedom and justice. And something that I found most interesting in the instilling femininity in women portion is that the founder of MGTOW states, "We will hold women equally accountable to men and ignore and shun those who refuse to take any responsibility for their own circumstances. Thus, we induce women to take a complementary position with men instead of a competitive position, as is now the case." A perfectly reasonable request, and one that many in the MGTOW community do not seem to follow, as evidenced by his quote, "Shun those who refuse to take responsibility for their own circumstances." And the reason that I believe a lot of MGTOW followers are not complying with this simple rule is because a large portion of this community is actually blaming women for their own inadequacies, rather than focusing on their own self-improvement as they should. This can be evidenced by the countless MGTOW videos that focus solely on the perceived faults of women. Literally search MGTOW on YouTube and you'll find hundreds, if not thousands, of videos with statements in the title like this. I find that very popular words to describe women in this community are liars, cheaters, cunts, idiots, and stupid. Very creative in my opinion. Anyways, at the end of this article he states, "The men's movement does actually cover a much larger picture. By instilling masculinity in others as well as yourself, you will actually be improving the lives of everyone, including women and children." And I think that is an extremely righteous conquest, and it shows that he does not seem to hold any bitterness against women. He just wants to promote self-improvement among men and women and the good of humankind. So let's compare the original definition, the definition from MGTOW.com, and the initial goals of MGTOW with those that are most popular within the YouTube community. And I'm going to use Sandman's description of MGTOW in his video called Introduction to MGTOW, since he is one of the most popular MGTOW channels on YouTube. And the like to dislike ratio shows that his views were very well received from this community. So between 20 to 30 seconds into this video, Sandman... Why does that keep happening? Sandman states that MGTOW are people who have learned the ugly truth about female nature. He claims that many women today, and I quote, "will rip out your heart and testicles through your wallet and move on to the next victim with absolutely no second thoughts, and that they often have no guilt or remorse in the process." First of all, I obviously think that's completely untrue. That is a very inefficient way of doing it. I would typically go for the heart first to incapacitate them, and then go for the testicles and the wallets after they're dead. You know, it's a little more humane. So for those of you ladies that have been doing it the way he describes it, I don't know where he got this information. It's very inefficient. I would recommend what I have just described to you. He also goes on to explain that there are 4 levels to MGTOW, and I have confirmed via many other MGTOW articles that these levels are generally agreed upon, unfortunately. And I think this level thing is actually a great idea. We should incorporate this system into other ideologies. Can you imagine how easy it would be if people could identify what level they were in their religion? Oh my god, it would make the world a much better place, believe me. So level 1, purple pill man. So this man is aware that women use the government's, the courts, and man's desires to reproduce to take advantage of men. However, this man believes that marriage is worth the potential punishment. So level 1 is where they've almost figured us out, ladies. For those of you who don't know, all us women are in on this massive conspiracy to take advantage of men via their natural desires to reproduce. We actually hold monthly meetings with all of the women in North America to practice ripping out your testicles and heart through your wallets, because that takes an enormous amount of strength and correct angling to accomplish. It's really a good workout for the obliques, because you really gotta put your whole body into it. Oh, and by the way, for all of you women out there, in regards to our last meeting, I didn't see Sally there. I think she is trying to escape us and trying to practice being a decent human being. And that is very concerning. That is not what women are about, Sally. Don't think you can go out and be a decent human being, Sally. Level 2. Doesn't have a specific name. I guess that's where the creativity stops, just at level 2. So this MGTOW believes in dating and short-term relationships, but no cohabitation with women whatsoever. Fair enough, I can't live with myself sometimes either. So level 3, no name again for this level. So this MGTOW doesn't believe in dating women at all and limits his interaction with women as much as possible. The thought is inconceivable. He literally cannot believe in dating women, just as an atheist cannot believe in the thought of God. And level 4. So this MGTOW tries to limit his interaction with the state and everyone else in general as much as possible too. He is referred to somebody who is ghosting and trying to stay invisible to women, essentially running away from his problems. And I added that last bit in because women are a problem, right, fellas? I'm sure being a level 4 MGTOW will work out well for you, considering that humans are social creatures and literally go insane without any human interaction. And just in case you didn't know that common knowledge, there are countless peer-reviewed articles you could search up confirming the severe mental and health consequences of social isolation. It's something I definitely don't recommend to my worst enemy. If you can't control your desires against women so much that you need to isolate yourself, what makes you think that you can control your basic desire for human interaction? What makes you think that? And it's totally fine to promote this sort of lifestyle to other young men that don't know what they're talking about in their pre-teens. They definitely won't regret it when they grow up and realize they can't even hold a simple conversation with anybody, because it's good to teach people to be a victim and run away from their problems. It's part of self-improvement, people. You gotta get woke and isolate yourself from society. So looking at these different levels with the definition given by a well-known MGTOW, it is safe to assume that the goal of the MGTOW community on YouTube is to try to avoid women, and with a little bit of mental gymnastics, you may come to the conclusion that they want to focus on their own self-improvement by doing so. Little bit of mental gymnastics. They don't want to be used by women because they can't help but succumb to their own sexual desires, and women know exactly how to manipulate such desires and use the gynocentric government in order to, quote, enslave these poor men. And it's kind of hypocritical of Sandman to say this sort of thing when he made a video called How to Use Women, question mark. fight fire with fire, even though there's no fire to begin with, and you're just gonna fuck up your own life. Anyways, I did some more research into this community through many articles that I will cite down below, and there are so many conflicting views on the subject on what a MGTOW actually is. And I've seen MGTOWs go against each other depending on their own definitions, kind of like feminazis. Anyways, here are some examples. Some people will follow the original founder's message and actually focus on their self-improvement rather than avoiding women. Some will get married, but it will be on their own terms. Some will get married regardless of whether it's on their own terms, but accept the consequences. Some will remain celibate, presumably by choice, as they like to claim. Some isolate themselves completely from everybody, even though the original goal is to just avoid women. And some have a lot of sex with women, or so they claim through anonymous, pictureless internet profiles, but never have relationships.
Oh, did Widow Stan Smith have a fight with his widow wife?
You don't even have a wife, Lonnie.
It's 'cause I don't want one. I can have any girl in this place.
I'm the only girl here.
Are you asking me to marry you?
And there are many more I can explain, but it'll take too long, and I don't want to dump your head with more of this bullshit, for lack of a better term. Maybe they should make a concrete Bible of some sort so we can actually know what their goals are, other than watching clips of stupid people on YouTube who happen to be women. Because that's part of self-improvement, right, fellas? Anyways, let's run through the points that the MGTOW community on YouTube is trying to make and see if it correlates with their initial goals for the avoidance of women and self-improvement. These points that I have gathered are based on numerous videos that have surfaced about these topics, the popularity of said videos, and the large like to dislike ratio of these videos, so we can assume that they are well accepted. So number 1, marriage and child support laws are unfair towards men. First of all, I 100% agree. The family courts are definitely positioned to be more favorable towards women, and I honestly would be scared to get married as a man in this day and age. And that's why I understand the reasoning from the level 1 and level 2 MGTOWs. If you want to see proof of that for yourself, go to Statistics Canada and look under child support statistics and alimony. An example can be that 19% of people of an unknown gender are paying child support when they had equal custody. You'll also notice that 93% of women are the people receiving the child custody checks. Therefore, it can be safe to assume that at least 15% of men pay child support when they have equal custody. So now that we've established that fact, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to petition, spread awareness of the situation, have civil discussions about it like an intelligent and reasonable person, or make and watch stupid shit like this on YouTube that doesn't help anyone? So number 2, probably the biggest point that MGTOW is trying to make. Marriage and divorce will make you miserable, so it's better to stay single. I know it's not really common knowledge, but I will explain it all to you soon, right after I take this drink. Now it's completely your choice to not get married. Nobody is putting a gun to your head, okay? Even women, we will only rip out your heart through your testicles and wallet, so you don't have to worry about that. But let's just look purely at the facts and not your own personal experiences, okay? According to this survey of 160,000 people by David Cameron, he found that people who were cohabiting or married were happier, less anxious, and found more life satisfaction than any other group. However, you'll notice that the most miserable people are divorced. And granted, there's a good chance that you may divorce and find yourself at point number 1. However, is there really a good chance that you're going to divorce and be miserable? Is the world really black and white? Okay, so first of all, you'll notice that the happiness levels of divorced, widowed, and single people are not that far off from each other. And marriage wins by a long shot in terms of happiness and self-fulfillment. But is it worth the risk? Because you have a 50-50 chance at either being extremely happy or extremely miserable. Well, let's look at the facts. Many may come to the false conclusion that 50% of first marriages and 60% of second marriages end in divorce based off of a survey in the 1970s. If you do the research, it is now clear that divorce peaked in the 1980s at 40%, and it actually went down in the early 2000s to 30%. And if you don't believe those statistics, you could go ahead and go to Statistics Canada or Statistics US or whatever you guys have over there, and it'll show the exact number of divorced people and married people, so you can do the math for yourself. According to Fertility, Family Planning, and Reproductive Health of U.S. Women, data from the 2002 National Survey of Family Growth, which is the most recent I could find, the divorce rate for first marriages for women between the ages of 15 and 44 was 30% within the first 10 years of marriage. However, nearly one half of these divorces were from women who married younger than 18 years of age, and only 20% of those who married 23 years of age or older. 20% of that 30%. So already, if you marry a woman 23 years of age or older, which I highly recommend, you have a very good chance of not getting divorced. But let's not stop there. Let's look at the causes of divorce. So the fact has been true for 125 years that women want divorce more than men. This can be evidenced by 25 different data points over 125 years that are summed up in this article called "These Boots Are Made for Walking: Why Most Divorce Filers Are Women." And let's keep in mind that the courts and social norms were sure not in women's favor in regards to divorce 125 years ago, to say the least. So maybe they really wanted that divorce. And let's look at the reasons why they would want that divorce today, where the perceived benefits are in their favor. Now, when looking at the causes for divorce in 2014, which is the most recent data set I could find, it's hard to say it's entirely the woman's fault, really, as many MGTOWers like to claim. 37% of women divorce their husbands because of emotional abuse, compared to 12% of men. 29% of women divorce their husbands because of alcohol or drug problems, compared to 14% of men, and 21% divorce their husbands because of physical abuse, compared to 7% of men. Now, does this mean that I think that all men are horrible people that abuse women and regularly use illicit drugs and alcohol? No. And you know why? Because I'm not a fucking idiot. So we can conclude from these actual statistics and not your feelings/personal experiences that women have reasons for divorce other than stealing your heart and wallet through your testicles, and about 21% get out because somebody is literally beating the shit out of them. You are not innocent or evil in a divorce because of your genitals, okay? And we can also conclude from these statistics that you have an extremely high chance of not getting divorced and living a happy life if you marry a woman above the age of 23, don't beat the shit out of her, and don't abuse alcohol or drugs. And if you do decide to do any of those things, which I don't recommend, you still have over a 70% chance of staying married for at least 10 years in your first marriage. Also, let it be known, if you stay single, you have a very high chance of being miserable, according to a national survey of 160,000 people compared to married people by a long shot. You are basically in the same position as somebody who is divorced or widowed. And it's much easier to make the choice to stay single. So if you decide to stay single and say, I never want to get married and I never want a long-term relationship, you have a very, very high chance of being in that category. So looking at the facts as a man, you have a much higher chance of being happy and fulfilled getting married than somebody who is single and has a similar happiness level as someone who is widowed or divorced. You'll also notice that 30% of men divorce their wives because of infidelity, compared to 27% of women. And we will take that on to our next point. Point number 3. All women are dishonest / cheat more. Let's start with dishonesty. I have yet to see any solid evidence from this community and elsewhere that women are more genetically predisposed to dishonesty. From the peer-reviewed articles that I read, I have come to the reasonable conclusion that dishonesty may have something to do with nurture rather than nature, and especially when the nature portion concerns the sex that you're born with. Find me one peer-reviewed article, just one, that suggests that ovaries, estrogen, and an extra X chromosome makes you more prone to be a liar. Now on to the cheating portion. I'm sure many of you MGTOWers have noticed with your tunnel vision that 30% of men divorce because of infidelity compared to 27% of women, which is a huge difference, 3%. But let's look at the statistics of who actually cheats rather than who divorces because of infidelity. I have found one of many studies that conclude that men cheat more than women. In fact, it's about a 4% difference in one study, and that's the lowest I could find. But the difference ranges from 4% to 15% in all of the studies that I've looked at, all leaning towards men cheating more. In fact, on ashleymadison.com, a site for extramarital affairs, over 18 million accounts are married men when compared to only 3 million being married women. However, do I think that all men are cheating scum? No. And you know why? Because I'm not a fucking idiot. Again, your own personal experiences and feelings are not evidence that all women are like that, alright? It's impossible for all women to be like that, just as it is impossible for all men to be like that. If you want to come across as somebody who wants to be taken seriously, use evidence and reason, not your feelings. Point number 4, and the last point I'm going to run through. Men are enslaved by women. Not to be a feminist, but search up the normal treatment for Middle Eastern women today and the 640,000 girls today that are being forced into sex trafficking, and then tell me it is women's nature to enslave men with sex. However, let's not take any of that meaningless information about women's nature into consideration, and let's just look at first world countries. This community frequently claims that women enslave men by marrying them and making them work to support them and their children, or that women take advantage of men via his natural desires for sex. A lot of this community quite literally thinks that there's some sort of conspiracy that all women are in on, and if you don't believe me, watch this video by Howard Dare. This thought process is so interesting. First of all, women have desires towards men as well. Women have desires to reproduce. Women will do stupid shit when they are in love just as men do. Like, have babies. Babies trap women too, you know? It's not like we just pop them out and you take care of them. That's not how it works. Our bodies go to shit. We get stretch marks. We are in extreme need of dependency in terms of finances and emotion, and we would like a father figure for our children. So it's not just men that get trapped here, okay? It's not a favorable situation on the surface for women as well. Women can also get taken advantage of by horrible people just as men can. Love is a drug. As Howard says, love does make you blind. But what he's wrong about is that love is not a condition that only men suffer. Like, I can't believe I'm even trying to convince a huge group of people that women have the capability to love. Can you imagine? How fucking blind can you be? Now I want to go into my last subject about how the MGTOW community is eerily similar to the feminazi community. I know this is a sensitive subject for all of you MGTOWs because you believe that MGTOW is fire and feminism is gasoline or some bullshit like that. But before you get your panties in a twist, please hear me out on how many similarities your community has with the third wave feminist community. So here's an article by Matt who brings up an interesting point about feminism in MGTOW. There was a feminist movement in the 1970s by somebody named Andrea Dworkin who argued for political lesbianism and that feminists who dated men were fraternizing with the enemy, similar to MGTOW who were swearing off of women in general. Although I haven't seen any MGTOW beliefs that support homosexuality among their community, which I think might do them some good as they are very obsessed with women, I think there may be some parallels here. Number one, they both hate the opposite gender. Both extremists in these groups preoccupy themselves with the obsession of the opposite gender. And again, this is evidenced by the countless MGTOW videos on YouTube that are solely about women and how horrible they are, similar to the feminazi community who dedicates their lives on convincing people how horrible men are. Number two, cannot handle criticism and gets triggered easily.
Saying these things directly to you and they're saying them directly to you, that's a whole other level of harassment, really.
It's a very similar thing to Anita Sarkeesian's behavior. My point will probably be proven very soon in the comment section down below and in the like and dislike bar on this video. I have already agreed with the level 1 and level 2 MGTOW's reasoning and have agreed with them on how unfair marriage laws are for men. But I assure you, you will see some comments down below where they are getting their panties in a twist because I don't believe that all women are horrible people, which is a very unreasonable thing to expect anyone to believe. Also, if you do end up agreeing with them completely as a woman, they will still hate you because you're playing the Nawaltz card and think that you are trying to seduce them by saying you're different from the others or some bullshit like that, because it's a massive conspiracy here. Number 3, driven by emotion and not reason. This can relate to my last point. They frequently bring up their own personal experiences with women and videos like this as proof that all women are bad rather than actual facts and reason. And here's something that I think a reasonable person would suggest to the MGTOW community. If you think that all women are horrible and every single encounter that you've had with women had gone horribly wrong, then maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't with half of the world's population. Maybe it's with you. And the chances of that statistically are extremely high. And number 4, pushing their beliefs onto children. Feminazis do the exact same thing, and I'll explain that later on. The most concerning thing I've seen in the MGTOW community is them passing their beliefs onto their unsuspecting children. Many of you may be confused as to how they could possibly have children if they're MGTOW and don't believe in having kids or getting married. Well, these particular MGTOWs are divorcees with children, and I'm going to take an educated guess and say that they might be a little bit bitter about their divorce. Anyways, I've come across quite a few people in the MGTOW community that want to pass the teachings of MGTOW onto their sons and daughters, which is sick in my opinion. I saw one particular person ask in a comment section, how do I get my daughter to not grow up to be a bitch? It kind of reminds me of this article where this feminazi believes that her sons are rapists even though they're good kids and have done nothing wrong. Same exact thing. I personally think that it's not right to push religions onto children, but teaching your sons that women are bad, therefore they should never get married and have a better chance at a happy life statistically is sick. It's also worse to teach your daughters that they're horrible people, because you're not going to raise good people if you keep telling them that they're horrible. Now, I have the opinion that adults have the right to do whatever the hell they want with their lives as long as it's legal and not hurting anybody else. However, you should feel ashamed to even think about bringing children into your messed up life. You can be MGTOW, but leave the kids alone, okay? And this isn't because I'm scared that I will have less potential mates when those children grow up, and that my children will probably have less potential mates, assuming I'm going to have a daughter. That's not it. And if you think that, you're sick. You need to get that checked out. I want to end with this message. I am of the opinion that you should never take advice for your own happiness from miserable people, because they have no fucking idea what they're talking about and they do not wish for your well-being. Looking at this community on YouTube, I can very safely come to the conclusion that these are not happy and secure individuals. It's alright if you don't want to marry, if you're into short-term relationships, etc., etc. Although I don't recommend that lifestyle to people who want a better chance at fulfillment and happiness in life. Nobody is putting a gun to your head. It's wrong to blame the opposite gender, or anyone else for that matter, for your own inadequacies. It is also wrong to obsess over your confirmation bias by watching bullshit videos like this. It's absolutely ridiculous to assume with no evidence that it is women's nature to be liars who are there to take advantage of men. Just as it is wrong for feminazis to do the same shit about men. MGTOW claims that feminazis made them into what they are, and yet they act just like them. That's why nobody takes you seriously, and that's why men who are actually successful and who are alpha males never label themselves as MGTOW. Stop trying to pull people into your social isolation and do something with yourself. Also, I will probably be doing a follow-up video if I receive a lot of questions, because others will probably want to know your thoughts since they may be thinking the same thing. So feel free to comment away. Anyways, here are my shoutouts. Rafael Manjares, Dan Green, Arc Lord B, Moondance Kid 1, and Benjamin Beltron, my 1000th sub, or so he claims, but I'll trust him. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for commenting. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry I couldn't get even most of you in this video, because I received a lot of comments and subscribers since my last video, and I want to thank you all for that. I will be coming up with a 1000 sub special soon, so stay tuned for that. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Go outside sometime this week, and don't engage in these clubs that promote self-victimization.